Let me ask you a question. What would your life look like if you stopped speaking doubt for just 3 days? If for 3 days straight, every word that came out of your mouth aligned with your vision and not your circumstances. I'm not talking about pretending. I'm talking about prophesying over your own life. Because here's the truth. Your mouth is a multiplier. Whatever you speak, you feed. Whatever you feed, you grow. So if you've been feeding frustration, don't be surprised when anxiety grows. If you've been feeding faith, favor is on the way. Your life today is a reflection of the conversations you had with yourself yesterday. The way you speak is not just casual communication, it's a creative force. Every time you open your mouth, you're either constructing or deconstructing your destiny. Words are not just sounds, they are spiritual containers. They carry life or they carry death. What many people fail to realize is that the most powerful voice in their life is not the voice of their parents, their boss, their friends, or even their enemies. It's their own voice. And the problem is, most people are using their voice to rehearse their limitations instead of reinforcing their possibilities. They say things like, I'm not good enough. I'll never succeed. I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't have the resources. And with every word, they're digging their identity deeper into the soil of mediocrity. But the truth is, you don't have to live at the level of your circumstances. You can live at the level of your confession. What you repeatedly say, you will eventually believe. And what you believe, you begin to act upon. And what you act upon becomes your habit. And your habits shape your character. And your character decides your destiny. So when you shift your words, you're not just changing your language, you're changing your life path. There is a spiritual law that says, let the weak say, I am strong. It doesn't say, wait until you feel strong. It says, say, you are strong. Why? Because words have the power to pre-program your experience. If you wait until the evidence shows up before you speak differently, you'll always be a prisoner of your past. But when you choose to speak what you want instead of what you see, you tap into a higher law, the law of faith. You begin to attract strength, favor, ideas, and opportunities that align with the words you've planted. The world you experience is simply the harvest of the seeds you've spoken. And every harvest is always a result of a seed. The issue is that some of us have been planting weeds and calling it wisdom. We've been speaking defeat and calling it realism. We've been rehearsing generational curses and calling it culture. But you were never called to echo the dysfunction of the world. You were called to declare the design of heaven. When you change your words, your brain literally starts creating new neural pathways. You begin to see yourself differently. You begin to walk differently, and you begin to feel more empowered to act boldly in alignment with the new narrative. This is not hype. This is biology and spirituality working together. Every affirmation you repeat gets imprinted into your subconscious, and your subconscious doesn't argue. It obeys. So when you speak with intentionality, you are giving your inner self new instructions that say, I am worthy, I am favored, I am growing, I am ready, and your life will start rearranging itself to honor those instructions. The people who learn how to speak their future are the ones who create it. They don't let their environment dictate their voice. They let their voice dictate their environment. They don't wait to feel positive to speak life. They speak life until they feel positive. The truth is, your words are like thermostats. They don't describe the temperature. They set it. You're either using your mouth to complain about the client, and for too many people, their mouths are their own worst enemy. They don't need a hater because they sabotage themselves with their own speech. They think they're being honest, but they're really being harmful. Honesty is not the same as truth. Honesty is how you feel. Truth is what aligns with your purpose. So if what you're saying doesn't align with where you're going, stop saying it. You have to learn how to prophesy over your own life. You have to learn to speak to your future like it's listening, because it is. You have to talk to yourself like the person you want to become, not the person you've been. Your words shape your world. Everything that shows up in your life starts first in your mind. The way you think creates the lens through which you interpret everything. And the thoughts you allow yourself to dwell on become the instructions your subconscious mind uses to build your reality. The subconscious is not analytical. It doesn't question, judge, or debate what you tell it. It simply receives your dominant thoughts and works day and night to manifest the world that matches them. That's why what you repeatedly say to yourself matters more than what anyone else ever says about you. The words you speak are the raw materials your subconscious uses to create patterns, emotions, behaviors, and results. People often think they're just talking, but in reality, they are programming. Every statement you make is either a command that moves you toward your purpose or a script that keeps you stuck in cycles. When someone says, "I always mess things up," or "nothing good ever happens to me," they are reinforcing a thought loop that becomes a lived loop. Eventually, they won't even notice the opportunities around them because their mind is locked into proving their own belief system right. The human brain is wired to seek alignment between what you believe and what you experience, which means if your internal narrative is toxic, your external world will eventually mirror that toxicity. Most people are trying to fix their life at the fruit level when the problem is at the root level. You can't fix a bad harvest by yelling at the fruit. You have to go back to the seed. And in this case, the seed is the thought. The moment a thought enters your mind and you accept it as true, it gains permission to grow. And every time you speak that thought aloud, you water it. Over time, that repeated pattern of thought and speech becomes a belief. And once something becomes a belief, it no longer feels like a choice. It feels like truth. That's why affirmations are so powerful. They aren't magical. They're mechanical. They're a tool you can use to intentionally reprogram the operating system of your mind. When you say something like, "I am capable," "I am valuable," or "I create abundance," you are planting seeds of empowerment in the soil of your subconscious. The more often you say them, the stronger the root system becomes. Eventually, those empowering beliefs become your default settings, and your mind starts working 24/7 to find evidence to support them. This process also explains why it's so dangerous to be careless with your internal dialogue. Your subconscious doesn't recognize sarcasm. If you joke and say, "I'm just a mess," or "I'm always broke," your inner system doesn't laugh. It listens. It takes those words and files them under truth and then builds systems around them. The same way a computer follows a code, your life follows your confessions. Most people want transformation but resist repetition. They want change but don't want to do the daily work of planting and watering new thoughts. But the subconscious mind doesn't respond to intensity. It responds to consistency. You don't need to scream an affirmation. You just need to speak it regularly enough for it to become believable. Repetition is the language of the subconscious. The more you hear it, the more you accept it. The more you accept it, the more you expect it. And what you expect, you begin to create. Your words are your personal prophecy. The difference between those who elevate and those who stagnate is not just education or resources, it's the inner dialogue. It's the language they use when no one's listening. That voice that tells you whether you can or can't, whether you're worthy or not, whether to take the risk or stay stuck. You can trace every breakthrough or breakdown in your life back to a belief system. And every belief system was built on repeated thoughts that were accepted as facts. So if you want to change your results, start by changing your words, because your words give structure to your thoughts, and your thoughts become the blueprint for your future. Every time you speak something positive, empowering, or faithful over your life, you're planting a seed in the soil of your future. A seed might seem small, insignificant, or even invisible in the moment, but it holds the potential to grow into something extraordinary when planted in the right environment and nurtured with consistency. The same way a natural seed requires time, water, sunlight, and protection from weeds, a spoken affirmation requires repetition, belief, alignment with action, and protection from negative influences. When you affirm something about your identity, your potential, or your destiny, you're not just saying nice words to feel better for a moment. You're engaging in the act of creation. You're introducing a new possibility into the world. You're telling your spirit and your mind, this is the direction we are moving toward. And just like natural laws govern the growth of seeds in the earth, spiritual and psychological laws govern the growth of affirmations in your life. Many people don't realize that they're already affirming something every single day, whether intentionally or not. When you say, I can't do this, that's an affirmation. When you say, I'm always behind, I'm unlucky, or people don't listen to me, you are planting seeds of limitation. The difference is that these seeds grow into weeds that choke out your potential. The ground doesn't care what kind of seed you plant, it will grow whatever you give it. The subconscious mind doesn't care if what you're saying is helpful or harmful. It just receives and stores it. That's why self-affirmation is not just a good habit, it's a necessary discipline if you want to see breakthrough. Breakthrough doesn't begin in the bank account or in a relationship or in your business. It begins in your belief system. And belief is shaped by repeated internal dialogue. The more you say something, the more your inner world aligns with it, and the more likely you are to act, decide, and persist in ways that make that statement a reality. Some people think affirmations are soft, weak, or emotional, but the truth is that affirmations are strategic. They are mental commands that establish your focus. Focus determines decisions, and decisions create outcomes. If you don't train your mind with positive affirmations, it will be trained by default with the noise of the world. Doubt, fear, scarcity, and shame. And those voices are always loud. They don't need your permission to speak, but you do have the power to override them. That power is in your words. Speaking faithful truth means you declare not just what you want, but what is aligned with who you were created to be. It's more than motivation. It's identity reinforcement. When you say, I am disciplined, you are not just describing yourself, you are instructing your behavior. When you say, I attract divine opportunities, you are opening your eyes to see things that may have been there all along but were blocked by doubt. When you say, I am a solution bringer, your mind begins to look for problems you were born to solve. Every affirmation becomes a seed of identity, and over time those seeds grow into a garden of clarity, confidence, and courage. Faith-filled affirmations are powerful because they are rooted in truth, not just preference. When you say, they don't just describe a temporary feeling, they declare an eternal principle. Even when your circumstances look like the opposite of what you're saying, that's when the seed is doing its deepest work. The soil may look undisturbed on the surface, but underneath, something is happening. Roots are being established. Foundations are being built. And if you don't stop speaking, the seed will not stop growing. You don't dig up a seed just because you don't see fruit on the first day. You speak, and then you stand. You declare, and then you decide. You affirm, and then you align. Over time, the compound power of your spoken truth begins to create visible results. People will see the fruit and think it appeared overnight, but you'll know it came from daily declarations spoken in faith, even when nothing looked different. You sowed when no one was watching, and now the harvest cannot be denied. The direction of your life is determined by patterns, not isolated moments. Most people are waiting for a breakthrough to come from the outside. But transformation begins with a decision to disrupt the cycle from within. 3 days of intentional, disciplined speech might sound simple, even insignificant, but the truth is that this kind of short-term focus can create long-term momentum. The reason most people never change is not because they lack desire, but because they never stay consistent long enough to see the shift. They get caught in emotional loops, speaking what they feel instead of what they want to believe. They wake up and say what their environment tells them, what their bank account reflects, what their fears whisper, and they end up reinforcing the very patterns they are trying to break. But when you make a decision to talk to yourself with intentionality for even just 3 days, you interrupt that loop. You insert new data into your mental system. You override old scripts that were running without your permission. For 3 days, if you speak only what aligns with your goals, your values, and your calling, you'll start to feel a shift internally. That shift is not because magic happened, but because you began to look through a different lens. Your brain started filtering information differently. Opportunities that were invisible before become noticeable. Possibilities that felt distant start to feel attainable. Your language begins to shape your thinking, and your thinking starts shaping your behavior. And once behavior changes, so does direction. That's what trajectory is all about. It's not about where you are right now, but where your current habits are taking you. And your most dominant habit is the way you speak to yourself. There's a principle that what you speak, you begin to believe, and what you believe, you begin to obey. So if you tell yourself over and over that you're not qualified, not enough, not ready, your actions will reflect that belief. You'll shrink, delay, procrastinate, and play small. But if for just 3 days you commit to declaring, I am ready, I am capable, I am a solution to someone's problem, then your energy, your confidence, and your decisions will begin to align with those declarations. Most people underestimate how fast change can begin. They think it takes months or years to feel different, to think differently, or to act differently. But the truth is, a single moment of clarity can trigger a new standard. And once that standard is raised, your inner system begins to reorganize itself around it. 3 days of discipline is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's about choosing not to let emotions drive your language. It's about refusing to give your circumstances the microphone. It's about choosing faith over fear, truth over lies, and potential over limitation. For 3 days, you can silence every negative narrative and replace it with language that elevates you. You can say, I am rising, even when you feel low. You can say, I am focused, even if you've struggled with distraction. You can say, I am wealthy, even if your bank balance says otherwise. Because what you speak is not just a report, it's a declaration of what's being built. In those 3 days, your spirit will begin to respond. Your subconscious mind will begin to recalibrate. You'll notice the difference in how you walk into rooms, how you carry conversations, and how you approach problems. Momentum will begin to build, not because everything outside changed, but because you changed the instructions you were giving your internal system. And when you change what's happening internally, the external eventually follows. Most people never change because they never interrupt their patterns. But you can shift the entire course of your future by starting with just 3 days of intentional speech. That discipline becomes a seed, that seed becomes a pattern, that pattern becomes a trajectory, and that trajectory determines the life you ultimately live. There's a powerful truth often overlooked in personal growth and transformation. Faith is not simply inherited or gifted, it is built. And it is built through repetition, through hearing, through exposure to a message strong enough to rewire doubt, fear, and limitation. Faith does not come merely by reading, observing, or even thinking. Faith comes by hearing, and the most influential voice you hear is not the preacher on the stage, not the coach on the call, not the friend cheering you on. It's the voice you hear every single day in your own head and from your own mouth. Your voice has authority in your life. What you say to yourself out loud echoes louder than any motivational speech from anyone else. This is not because your voice is louder in volume, but because your brain and your spirit recognize it as the voice of leadership. Your words are not casual, they are commands. And when you speak, your subconscious listens and adjusts. Your physiology responds, your energy shifts, your posture changes, your beliefs recalibrate. So when you say, I am confident, you are not merely making a statement, you are reinforcing an identity. When you say, I am rising, you're not describing a condition, you're calling it forth. The challenge is that most people have allowed their voice to become a mirror of their environment instead of a megaphone for their future. They use their voice to repeat what they see instead of declare what they desire. They talk about the pain, the lack, the frustration, the delay, and then wonder why their belief system is crumbling. You cannot build faith if all you're feeding your mind is fear. You cannot grow if the voice you hear the most often is canceling your potential. The truth is, your faith is either growing or shrinking every time you speak. Every word is either fertilizer or poison to your future, and the volume of that impact is multiplied when the words come from your own mouth. That's why affirmations are not hype, they are healing. That's why declarations are not fluff, they are fuel. Because when you speak something with conviction, your inner world begins to align with that word. And alignment leads to action, action leads to results, and results reinforce belief. Hearing your own voice speak life over your future builds emotional memory. It creates pathways in your brain that start to associate certain phrases with feelings of hope, strength, clarity, and power. Over time, those associations become automatic. You begin to speak strength and immediately feel stronger. You speak wealth and immediately think of solutions. You speak growth and instantly feel a pull to stretch beyond your current limitations. Your voice becomes a soundtrack of possibility, and that soundtrack begins to drown out the noise of limitation that tries to dominate your mind. You don't need everyone else to believe in you when you learn to speak like someone who believes in yourself. Faith is not a one-time event. It is a daily discipline. And that discipline is built in the repetition of hearing yourself say the truth over and over until doubt dies and belief takes root. Even in moments of silence, your voice still lingers. It creates an atmosphere. The words you spoke yesterday still affect your mood today. The affirmations you repeated this morning are shaping the decisions you'll make this evening. You're not just filling air when you speak. You're forming identity, you're sculpting mindset, you're constructing belief systems. And the most powerful construction crew in your life is made up of the words that come from your own mouth. So if you want to build unshakable faith, if you want to cultivate confidence that doesn't evaporate under pressure, you must learn to speak with consistency and conviction. Say it until you feel it. Say it until the old programming fades and the new reality takes root. Because when your voice is filled with faith, your life will begin to follow that sound. Most people spend their lives declaring goals, dreams, and desired outcomes, yet continue to fall short of transformation because they never speak to the root of who they are. They say things like, I want to make $1 million. I want to get in shape. I want to be successful. But these are outcomes, not identity. The truth is, you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And until your identity aligns with your intention, you'll constantly sabotage your own success. The language of lasting change is not based on results, it's based on identity. The most powerful declarations are not just about the end goal, but about the internal shift that has already taken place. When you say, I am a disciplined person, you're speaking from a place of identity, and identity governs behavior far more powerfully than motivation ever could. Motivation fades, but identity is stable. When you declare, I am a person of excellence, your brain begins filtering every choice, every response, and every habit through that lens. Outcomes are the fruit, but identity is the root. If you try to change the fruit without nurturing the root, you might see temporary results, but they will not last. This is why people can achieve short-term wins and still return to old patterns. The identity never shifted, so the environment couldn't hold the change. But when you declare who you are becoming, you rewire your internal system to support the change you desire. It's not just about saying, I will succeed. It's about saying, I am someone who follows through. That simple shift from outcome to identity transforms how you interpret challenges. You stop seeing obstacles as stop signs and start seeing them as training grounds. You stop quitting when it's hard because your words have already told your mind that you are someone who overcomes difficulty. When you say, I am focused, your brain begins to delete distractions. When you say, I am healthy, your habits begin to adjust. When you say, I am favored, your energy attracts new connections. These are not just words, they are instructions. Your identity is shaped by repetition. And every time you declare something about who you are, you reinforce that reality. Eventually, that identity becomes automatic. You no longer have to force discipline because it's who you are. You no longer have to fight to stay motivated because your identity carries you. This is how high performers operate. They don't just focus on what they want to achieve, they focus on who they need to become to naturally produce that achievement. Their language reflects that internal commitment. They're not chasing outcomes, they're cultivating character. The problem with focusing only on outcomes is that it can breed frustration. When results don't show up immediately, doubt creeps in. But when you speak identity, you shift your focus from external validation to internal growth. You begin to trust the process more because you're not just working towards something, you're becoming someone. And once becoming takes place, results become inevitable. This also makes your declarations more powerful because when you speak from identity, your words carry authority. You're not begging for a result. You're affirming a truth. You're not speaking like someone hoping to get lucky. You're speaking like someone who knows who they are and where they're headed. That kind of language moves mountains, opens doors, and silences fear. The power of identity-based affirmation is that it bypasses wishful thinking and taps directly into the core of how behavior is formed. Identity informs belief. Belief informs action. Action informs results. It starts with the words you say. So instead of saying, I want to write a book, say, I am a writer. Instead of saying, I want to lose weight, say, I am fit and consistent. Instead of saying, I hope I make it, say, I am built for this. Every time you speak like this, you build a stronger connection to the version of you that already exists in the realm of potential. You don't just declare what's coming. You declare what's already true in the unseen. That truth, when repeated, becomes internalized. And once internalized, it becomes visible through choices, habits, and outcomes that match the new identity. You don't need more time, more money, or more approval to begin transforming your life. You need a decision to take ownership of your voice, your thoughts, and your identity. Because everything you desire, peace, purpose, abundance, discipline, legacy, starts with the way you speak to yourself. Your words are not empty, they are electric. They are planting something with every syllable. For too long, you've rehearsed limitation and wondered why breakthrough hasn't come. But now you understand your mouth is your master key. In just 3 days of disciplined, identity-driven speech, you can begin to rewire the deepest parts of your thinking. You can silence the noise of the world by raising the volume of truth in your own voice. You can interrupt the old programming and install a new pattern, one of victory, clarity, and divine alignment. Speak as the person you are becoming, not the person you've been. Declare not just outcomes, but identity. Don't just say what you want, say who you are. Because when you consistently speak from identity, your behavior begins to follow, your decisions begin to shift, and your results begin to multiply. Faith comes by hearing, and your future is listening. Your voice is the first architect of your destiny. So build something worthy. Build something bold. Speak with power. Speak with vision. Speak like someone who's not waiting to become great, but someone who has already accepted the assignment. You've heard the truth. Now activate it. Open your mouth and start building the life your silence could never create.